They said she was just a nanny, but when the millionaire's daughters finally slept, secrets began to wake. What she exposed inside that mansion shattered generations of quiet injustice. The twins hadn't slept through a single night in half a year. Every bedtime ended in screaming, sobbing, and nightmares that haunted the corridors of the Alcott estate. Until one woman arrived, quiet, calm, and unshaken by the storm that had broken 6 nannies before her. Her name was Maya Brown, and the day she walked into that marble foyer, with just a canvas bag on her shoulder and peace in her voice, something shifted. But peace rarely arrives unchallenged. She's drugging them, hissed Mrs. Langley, the housekeeper of 15 years. Her words cracked like thunder through the dining room. It's unnatural. 2 wild children don't start sleeping like angels unless something's off. Elliot Alcott, widowed billionaire and single father, stared into his coffee. His daughters, Ivy and Isla, had finally slept 8 hours. For the first time since their mother's fatal crash, the house was quiet. He wanted to believe it was healing. But Langley wasn't letting it go. Maya stood at the center of it all, calm as stone. She didn't flinch, didn't plead. She simply let the accusation breathe, then offered something no guilty person ever would. Then install a camera in their room. She said gently, let the footage speak. Langley blinked. She hadn't expected that. Elliot didn't either. Because this woman, who had come from a broken neighborhood on the South Side, spoke like someone with nothing to fear. There was something strange about her. Not strange in a bad way. Strange in a way a storm settles before it breaks. She quoted neuroscience like a professor. She noticed patterns no one else saw. The girls trusted her within hours, after months of refusing to even look strangers in the eye. Elliot had questions. Why would someone with this kind of mind, this presence, accept a job most wouldn't survive a weekend? You want to see what happens at night? Maya asked softly. She pulled out her phone and tapped a video. Footage of a child clinging to her lap, of whispered lullabies, of safety wrapped in patience. Langley's face changed, not because she was convinced, but because she was threatened. This wasn't just about children. This was about control. 3 weeks earlier, Maya had stepped off a city bus and looked up at the Alcott mansion. She knew what she was walking into. She'd seen women like Langley her whole life, gatekeepers of privilege, camouflaging fear's loyalty. But Maya wasn't here to win approval. She was here for something far more precise. Langley continued. She acts too calm. Normal women would be crying by now. Look at her. Look at the way she stands, like she knows something we don't. Elliot was silent, but he was listening. And Maya, she finally spoke. Actually, she said, I do. I know, Maya continued, her voice soft and heavy, that Ivy wakes up at exactly 2:37 every night. Because in her dreams, she's falling. The same way her mother did when the car flipped over. Silence strangled the room. I know Isla checks every lock in a hallway before bed, not because she's paranoid, but because deep down, she no longer believes this house is safe. Not since her mother left and never came back. Elliot's hand trembled slightly as he set his coffee cup down. He had never shared those details. Not with anyone. Langley's face turned stiff. Her mouth opened, but nothing came out. And I know, Maya added, turning calmly toward her, that you've been telling people in your domestic workers network that this family deserves someone more suitable for these girls. Langley's skin flushed. That's not, I never. You did? Maya cut in. Your messages last Thursday in the elite nannies WhatsApp group say she's probably trying to seduce the widower. Watch. Next she'll be asking for favors. Elliot turned to Langley, stunned. His voice cracked. Is that true? Langley stammered. She was unraveling. How does she even have that? This is insane, Mr. Alcott. She's manipulating you. Maya stepped forward, not aggressively, but like someone done playing small. You want the truth? She said, eyes locked on his. Then let's start with why I really came here. She pulled a leather folder from her bag and placed it on the table. You sure you want this open, Langley? Because once I do, there's no going back. Elliot didn't stop her. Inside was a set of printed emails, dates highlighted in yellow. 6 months ago, Maya said, you fired an architect named Samuel Grant, a black engineer who had just designed your new urban housing project. Elliot squinted at the name. Samuel? Yes, there are concerns planted by her housekeeper. Maya replied. Emails, calls. Each time she whispered doubts about people who didn't fit your family's image. Langley turned pale. Elliot leaned forward slowly. How do you know this? Maya exhaled. Because Samuel is my brother. The room froze. And when he told me how he was treated, how quietly, how strategically, he was pushed out, I made a decision. I wasn't going to sue. I was going to document. She looked at Elliot, not as an employee, but as a witness. And when I saw the way your daughters were suffering, I knew I had to step into this house. I didn't know. Elliot whispered. I had no idea. No, Maya said, because Gloria made sure you didn't. That's how it works. One comment here, one doubt there. She made her poison sound like advice. Langley tried again. She's here to destroy everything. This is revenge, planned from the start. You're right, Maya replied with a calm, dangerous smile. I planned everything, but not to destroy, to expose, to heal, and to rebuild what your silence has allowed to rot. Elliot stared at Maya, stunned by the unfolding truth. You have a master's degree? He asked, barely above a whisper. Child psychology, she nodded. University of Chicago. I spent 6 years working in pediatric trauma before opening my own clinic in Detroit. Then why take this job? He asked, voice cracking. Maya looked at him, the weight of her mission glowing quietly behind her eyes. Because sometimes justice doesn't come from lawsuits, she said. Sometimes it walks into the front door in the form of a nanny who listens. Gloria Langley was unraveling. If she's so qualified, she spat. Why'd she take a job that pays a tenth of what she's worth? Maya smiled. Because your company broke a man who did nothing wrong. Because your whispers made my brother lose his home, put his wife in a depression, and made his children wonder why their dad stopped smiling. Elliot's face collapsed into his hands. He looked like a man realizing he'd been asleep for too long. I just want to protect our standards, Langley pleaded. Standards? Elliot shot back. You mean prejudice disguised as tradition? But Maya wasn't done. She tapped her tablet and opened a recording. Here's a voice message you left during Ruby's birthday party, she told Langley. You told a guest I shouldn't be near girls raised in dignified homes. 20 people heard it, and now so will 20 more. Langley's face turned ghost white. That party had been attended by the city's elite. The ripple of this exposure would be unforgiving. Mr. Alcott, Maya said, her voice steady now. This wasn't just about your house. This was about your entire company. She slid a second folder across the table. Over the last 3 years, 16 black or Latino employees were quietly dismissed or demoted from your firm. In 60% of the cases, Langley had input. Elliot flipped through spreadsheets, resumes, emails. This can't be, he muttered. Some of these people had better qualifications than the ones we hired. Exactly, Maya said. But they didn't have the right skin or the right background. Langley made one final attempt. She's making this all up. She's trying to ruin me. No, Maya said, holding her gaze. I'm just organizing your own actions. Every message, every whisper, every manipulation, all documented. Elliot turned to her, finally seeing the mountain of quiet battles she'd fought, and won. My daughters are sleeping not because they've been drugged, she said. They're sleeping because someone finally understood their pain, because someone was willing to see them. Just then, the front door burst open, 2 little voices filling the hallway like sunlight. Daddy, Annie Maya, cried Isla, her cheeks pink from play. We found a nest in the big tree. Maya knelt, arms wide, and the girls flew into them without hesitation. Elliot watched, chest tight. Their laughter, their light, it hadn't existed since the crash. And now it bloomed every time they touched her hand. Langley stared at the girls with a kind of panic she could no longer hide. The truth had arrived, and even the children could feel it. Daddy, can we show Annie Maya the picture we made? Ivy asked. Go ahead, sweetie, Elliot said, barely getting the words out. The twins raced off down the hallway. Maya turned slowly toward Langley, holding back nothing now. "Are you sure you want to keep going?" she asked. "Because I still have footage from that birthday party. And screenshots of the photos you shared without my permission, along with your commentary." Elliot froze. "You shared photos of my daughter's caregiver? Talked about us in some gossip group?" Langley opened her mouth, but nothing came. "You didn't just violate privacy," Elliot said, voice cold. "You tried to burn bridges behind closed doors. And now you want sympathy because you're the one caught holding the match." Maya stepped back. She had said enough. Now the damage spoke for itself. "But that's not all," she said, opening a final folder. Langley flinched. "These are the names of 23 highly qualified professionals whose applications were quietly dismissed after you meddled in background checks. Some from MIT, some from Yale. None white enough, apparently." Elliot flipped through the resumes, visibly shaken. "All rejected because of you?" Langley stuttered. "I was just looking out for the company's image." Maya raised an eyebrow. "And who gave you the authority to define that image?" Elliot's jaw clenched. "What image, Gloria? One where talent is erased to protect your comfort zone." Langley's world crumbled with every passing second. She lunged toward Maya with one last desperate plea. "You set me up." Maya met her with an unshakable calm. "No, you set yourself up. I just wrote it all down." The twins came skipping back, holding crayon drawings. "Look, this is Annie Maya reading us a bedtime story. And this ones are showing us the stars." Elliot looked at those simple pages, drawn in innocence, soaked in truth, and realized something he couldn't ignore anymore. This woman hadn't just saved his daughters. She'd shown them what real love looks like. He looked back at Langley. "You're done here." Langley gasped. "Mr. Alcott, please, 15 years I've served your family." Elliot didn't blink. 15 years of steering my judgment. 15 years of undermining capable people. 15 years of injecting fear into this house. He turned to Maya. "Is it true she blocked hires too?" Maya handed over one more document. "This is a list of applicants she personally sabotaged. 23 in total. Engineers, architects, analysts, many of them overqualified, none of them white." Elliot scanned the names. One had an MBA from Harvard. "Didn't match the culture," she said. Maya added, "But that culture was code." Langley's last thread snapped. "She's ruining my life." "No," Maya said. "You did at the moment you chose fear over fairness." Elliot stood tall, something different in his voice now. "Gloria, you have 1 hour to gather your things. You are no longer welcome in this house." But where will I go?" "That's not my concern," he said firmly. "What concerns me is what kind of world my daughters grow up in." Langley backed away, defeated. And Maya? She didn't gloat. She just watched, quietly. This wasn't vengeance, Dot. IT was balance being restored. "What about the company?" Maya asked softly. Elliot turned to her with a heavy exhale. "First thing tomorrow, I'm calling an emergency board meeting. We'll audit every hire, every dismissal, every file Langley touched." He looked down at the spreadsheet again. "Anyone wrongfully removed will be reinstated or compensated." Maya gave a small nod. It was enough. Justice didn't always roar. Sometimes it whispered through paper and policy until silence shattered. Langley left that evening, silently, with no fight left in her. The woman who once ruled the Alcott household with whispers and judgment walked out with a single suitcase, and no one to vouch for her. Within days, her messages and voice notes leaked quietly across the domestic worker networks, sealed her fate. The families she once impressed closed their doors. No one wanted to hire the woman who'd been exposed as the gatekeeper of prejudice. She ended up working night shifts at a chain motel off the interstate. The world she built on quiet cruelty had finally collapsed. Meanwhile, change swept through the Alcott estate like spring rain. Elliot held his board accountable. 5 senior staffers were fired for discrimination. 23 former employees were offered their jobs back, with apologies, compensation, and new roles. And Samuel, Maya's brother, was promoted. He now led a department focused on sustainable housing for marginalized communities. His salary doubled, and this time his office had windows. Big ones. Face in the garden. Your sister changed everything. He told Elliot during their first strategy meeting. She didn't burn bridges, Elliot replied. She lit torches, so the rest of us could see where the rot was hiding. In time, the company rewrote its protocols, blind hiring practices, inclusive leadership training, and a new mantra, talent sees no color. The ripple effect reached beyond Whitmore Development. Other firms took notice. Other voices spoke up. The silence was broken, and it wasn't going quiet again. 6 months later, the Alcott house no longer echoed with pain. The twins no longer woke in the night screaming. They no longer clung to their pillows in silence. They were laughing again, painting stars, chasing fireflies across the garden lawn. But something deeper had changed, beyond bedtime rituals or household staff. Elliot had changed. He no longer looked at the world through a filtered lens of comfort. He had seen what silence enables, and what listening, truly listening, can undo. Samuel Grant, once dismissed by a whisper, now sat as director of sustainable projects. His first initiative? A green housing complex designed for single-parent families in underserved neighborhoods, named after his late mother. Fully funded by Alcott Development, overseen by a board that now included voices once ignored. I still can't believe Maya did all this, he said to Elliot one afternoon, watching construction crews begin the foundation. She saw a system that needed shaking, Elliot replied, and she didn't wait for permission to shake it. Maya declined every offer Elliot made after Langley's departure. Full-time role? Executive consultant? Company car? She said no to all of it. Instead, she used the evidence she had gathered, not to destroy, but to build. She launched her own consulting firm. Its mission? Uncovering hidden bias in corporate and domestic ecosystems, and uprooting at the source. Her first client was a regional hospital sued for racial disparities in pediatric care. They hired her for 1 month. They kept her for a year. At home, Ivy and Isla still called her Annie Maya. She wasn't their nanny anymore. She was family. She still visited twice a week, read them stories under the stars, helped them draw constellations on the ceiling with glow-in-the-dark paint. They wore matching necklaces now, little silver stars around their necks. Because for 2 little girls, Maya Brown had become more than comfort. She had become the sky that made sleep safe again. Over breakfast one morning, Ivy looked up at her father. Is Annie Maya coming to my birthday party? Elliot smiled. She'll be sitting right next to Uncle Sam. In the quiet of his study, Elliot looked over the final audit report. 23 employees reinstated. 5 senior managers dismissed without a complete overhaul of HR protocols. An internal code of ethics now displayed at every office location. One that began with a quote Maya had once spoken to him in passing. Injustice unchallenged is injustice repeated. He read those words now like scripture. But the legacy she left behind wasn't in numbers or memos. IT was in what came after. It was in a young black mother in Chicago who found Maya's interview online. My 6-year-old is being called difficult in school, she said through tears on the phone. He's not difficult. He's grieving. He's gifted. They just won't see it. Tell me everything, Maya said, notebook open. Let's start at the beginning. Maya's war had never been loud, but it had always been precise. She didn't wield revenge like a blade. She wielded truth like a scalpel, removing rot with surgical grace, exposing wounds that had long been dressed as tradition. And when she was done, healing was finally possible. The day of the birthday party arrived with sunlight and slow jazz floating from the speakers. The garden was filled with balloons, homemade banners, and laughter that no longer carried tension. Ivy and Isla wore dresses the color of twilight, their arms tangled around Maya as if she were stitched into their souls. Elliot stood at a distance, watching it all, the children, the woman who had rebuilt their home from inside out, and his own transformation. He didn't just see a nanny anymore. He saw a revolution dressed in gentleness. The guests that afternoon weren't CEOs or polished society wives. They were teachers, single moms, counselors, social workers. People who knew what it meant to carry pain and still show up with love. Samuel gave a toast, simple, proud, full of fire. To the woman who made it possible, he said, raising his glass toward his sister. To Maya, who turned a house into a haven and made sure no child sleeps afraid again. The applause rippled like wind through the trees. Later, when the cake was done and the sun had dipped low, Elliot sat beside Maya on the garden bench. The twins were chasing fireflies again, their joy spilling like poetry across the lawn. "Why'd you really do it?" he asked quietly. "You could have sued. You could have walked away with millions. But instead you stayed. You helped. You healed." Maya looked down at the soil beneath her shoes. "Because someone had to," she said. "Because silence is what protects people like Gloria. And because Ivy and Isla deserved a chance to grow up in a world where love doesn't come with conditions." She turned to him, her eyes soft but steady. "And maybe because I was tired of watching people whisper behind closed doors and call it tradition." He nodded, no word strong enough to meet hers. Just understanding. Just gratitude. Weeks passed. Then months. Maya's firm grew faster than expected. Hospitals, school boards, private firms, even city officials. Everyone wanted her to look at their systems with the same quiet blade of truth. She didn't shame. She revealed, and the world began to listen. Back in the Alcott house, changes stayed. Hiring panels were diversified. The Family Foundation began funding trauma support for children of color. And every decision Elliot made now passed through a single filter. Does this build bridges or walls? Years later, Ivy, now 10, would tell a journalist at a school project showcase, "My Aunt Maya taught me that bravery isn't loud. It's calm. It's smart. It's when you see something wrong and you don't look away." And Elliot, listening from the back of the auditorium, would blink back tears he no longer hid from, because that was a legacy Maya left behind. Not just justice, but vision, compassion, a new blueprint for what power could look like when wielded with conscience. Gloria once tried to build her future on sand. Maya built hers on truth. And in the end, only one of those still stood. If this story touched your soul, remember this. The strongest revolutions begin in silence, and the deepest justice